We'd like to welcome Natraj Choudhury into podcast series 3. Thank you so much for doing this, Natraj, and coming to our office. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure, Roopa.
Awesome. So, for all those people who don't know Natraj, it's a pleasure to have you here because you're one of the technologists that I really, really like. For one main reason, you're very close to technology, and that kind of interests me a lot. So, if I look at your journey, you started with Wipro, then you moved down to NEC, from NEC to Ola. I think I missed Walmart in between, Ola, and then now Zolve, right? Very different companies in terms of what they do and what they offer. Especially, I like the part that even at NEC, you are involved in the entire Aadhaar piece project as well, isn't it? So, would you be able to tell me that these transition of these companies, how did you see them in terms of in your mind from a technology perspective?
More than a technology perspective, I saw them as different problem statements that we needed to solve, and not biased by technology. That I have a technology and I'll use it to solve it. I had a problem and we had to solve it. So at Cisco and Wipro, it was really building up almost new protocols from the start to enable multimedia communications. So how do you sort of merge voice with chat, voice with, which is now ubiquitous with Zoom and WebEx and things like that. But those days it was not.
Sure.
So it was not specific that which technology we use. We tried out a lot of things and then came out with what is the best protocol, what is the best messaging. Similar for Aadhaar, right? So when I joined NEC Labs, which was interestingly in HSR at that time, it was the problem statement. It was, then we literally had to start from first principles. In retrospective, if we had done it today, we would not, because the technology is there to run data grids at that scale. At that time, it was not there. So we literally had to start from first principles. We were not biased by we have to use this or use that. We started with the opinionated way of solving it. As we hit problems or as we figure out there are better ways to do it, say we could move data between two services better rather than using, say, text kind of serializing into a binary serializer, we started using that. We started doing things where we could actually use a connection UDP kind of protocol rather than TCP and things like that. But those were not planned ahead. It was as we hit that scale, we realized the how large the problem is as we got into the problem, right? And we built for that. Similarly, at Walmart Labs, I just did not bring, I had my learnings from building Aadhaar, which was a massive system, but if I just transferred that learning into, it would have been something else. So we figured out, how do we build up a global omnichannel system? How do we make it future-proof, right? That we're not just building for today. This has to last for the next 5-6 years. So how do other countries plug into the system, other systems plug in? And that was built. The whole goal of the system was different from a raw data processing system, which is Aadhaar. Similarly, when we launched groceries and Walmart and things like that, the algorithms required to do that. The aim of that was very different from So I think that's how. Same for Ola, right? So I just did not get I did this in Walmart, it succeeded, and we do this in Ola.
Sure.
Very similar, and it is the same at Zolve. The stage of the company, the need of the company, the problem at hand, that is what determines what technology you use, rather than being biased that I will only use this and solve it.
Right, right.
So that has been my sort of go-to mantra, if you
But
say.
beautiful, right? You look at it from how what is the problem that's defined, and you want to create an impact by solving for that problem. That's what I hear when you are giving
Right,
this
because
in that
otherwise what
context.
happens is that you might be successful in solving a problem, and then you think that that is the only way to solve a problem.
Right.
Then you become biased around that. So one thing I would say that I probably did well is that I was not biased around that. That just because this worked here doesn't mean that it will work
Everywhere.
everywhere. So
Right. Right.
And a lot of very smart colleagues helped, because you get a lot of sounding board, and as soon as you start veering towards that, you get it, okay, that's not the way to do it. And once you go with that open mind and your basics are good, I think any good engineer would be able to navigate these things. And all of them are completely different domains, different problems, but I think the skill sets are still the same. Your basics are good, you have an open mind, you will be able to solve it.
Amazing. So, Natraj, if I were to look at your current journey, I think that you're more in terms of a creator. In our side of business, we call you the Brahma, the one who's creating something out of nothing, right? So, when you moved into Zolve, of course, a fintech, right? There is regulations that you have to look at. You're looking at a completely different TAM. It's not even India regulations that you're looking at. Can you tell us behind the scene? How did you prepare? How do you make this compliant before the product took off?
Right. Even in Ola, right, we had to comply with quite a lot of regulations. We had to comply with the Indian regulations set up by RBI and other. Even as we launched London and all, we had to comply with regulations set up by the transportation for London, and also the global fintech and privacy regulations, GDPR. We were one of the first Indian companies which was compliant with GDPR. Then we had to comply with the PSD2, which is the European Open Banking. This was something that I had a decent idea of how to go about it. The learnings is that at Ola, a lot of it was an afterthought, in a sense that we took it as it came in, which also meant that we had to do a lot of rework. We had to redo a lot of the systems, redo a lot of the processes, and things like that. Now, with Zolve, the things are a little different, in a sense that the expectation is that you are. This is sort of front end central to Zolve. And interestingly, it is not only the US regulations. So we also have to comply with some of the Indian regulations, because we onboard people in India. We allow remittances from India to US and things like that. So we have to comply with the RBI regulations. We have to comply with the Indian Bureau regulations.
Wow. Okay.
And they audit us. We have to comply with regulations in the US, open banking regulations, banks regulations. We have banking partners in India, US, all of them we have to comply with. So I think it was very clear that if we did not do it right and right up front, it would actually slow us down. That's where I think when we build Zolve, the architecture of Zolve, the processes of Zolve, what kind of tooling we will use in Zolve, we tried to bake it in. I won't say we are perfect. We are far from there. But we made every attempt to build it in. For example, right now we are in the middle of a SOC 2 audit. The SOC 2 is required by most organizations which handle such customers' data. Even there, what we did is that we did not go with the traditional audit mechanism where we do it once a year and do it. We are using tools which will actually monitor the preparedness of Zolve at any point in time. It is actually running 24/7. It's monitoring my network, monitoring my processes, and all these things. And what that makes is it's compliance. We are not taking it just for an audit purpose or something like that. Again, there are compliance requirements for customers, right? So, and we built it as first-class services, right? So, for example, if the customer needs to upload an address proof within a certain number of days, it is actually built in. It's an automation which is in the system. It's not that human beings have to do it, and we remind the customer and around that. So, and also the architecture, right? We have built in a way where privacy, one of the things which comes with compliance and all, and most of the countries are becoming very, very sensitive to privacy. India is coming up with its own privacy regulations. Europe was the leader with GDPR. US already has it in a couple of states, CCPA, which is very similar to GDPR. So privacy, data security, and all are essential for compliance. You can't get compliance in a vacuum. How we design the system, we ensure that data is not spread around. There are only single sources of truth for the data, and anybody who accesses the data, including systems which access the data, will access only if it is absolutely required, and they will not store data, right? So they will only have pointers to those data, which makes us confident that we know where the data is, at least in our systems.
Right.
It's a very different story once the data goes into the analytics clusters and all these things. And there also what we did right upfront is, and we are currently also doing it, is that instead of using rule-based methods, which really depend on it's almost that you really know where your sensitive data is hiding or something like that. We used a lot of a combination of rule-based as well as AI-based tools to actually figure out where is a sensitive PII in that. Have I put correct masking and policy towards that? You cannot implement compliance, security, privacy regulations if you don't know where the data is. So those are things we did right upfront, right? So as we get into more and more regulatory, my hope is that we are better prepared than in my previous places to take them. Obviously, we'll hit roadblocks and things like that, because the regulations also change.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's dynamic.
Regulations change, especially in the crypto world and things like that. Regulations change every few months. But I think what we have done is all the things, right? The audit frameworks are built right up front. We also have to cope with data localization. That's a problem which is fairly new, because there is a lot of, I would say, nationalization around data. So certain data needs to stay in India. It cannot go out of India. Certain data needs to stay in US, cannot go out of US. We have to handle both sides, right? So even right up front, we have actually data centers in India and United States. Right, so we run out of 2 data centers, and data is not actually moving around. So in addition to the normal compliance requirements like PCI or data localization is a very, very big, and if you don't do it, we have had instances in India where very large systems were actually shut down because the data was not localized.
It was compromised.
Right. No, it was not even compromised. It was that I think they could not prove that all the data sits in India. Right. And so these are things we decided that we would be very mindful of right from the start. I think we are just 5% done in that journey, but we took steps in those directions, and we also validated. That's another important thing. Internally, we might think, okay, we have done all great, but I cannot be the maker and the checker. So what we do is, we have been live only for the last 7-8 months. In that, we have had at least 3 vulnerability and penetration testing audits by third parties. We have had multiple compliance here done by say bureaus and things like that. Plus, we regularly have external red teams. Red teams are basically cybersecurity teams who try to attack and penetrate your system from outside.
Sure.
Right. Run those attacks against.
So data thefts are protected.
Data thefts, are they able to actually expose any vulnerabilities in the system? So we keep on doing it. Security is not a one-time thing, and I think that's something we realize. Right. You might be fully secure today, but some things which has gone into your system in the next few months can actually compromise you.
Sure.
And that's why, in addition to taking the measures, we have this regular. We tie up with a lot of white hat hackers and let them try to penetrate the systems and things like that. And,
sure.
So that's sort of a 360-degree view. And even for the security and all these things, instead of not only the traditional methods, we have actually built in a lot of these tools, right? So every API call is not only audited, it is also, we have an AI tool in place which figures out if there is an anomaly. So say in order to create an account, Natraj used say 5 clicks or something to go in,
Okay.
but someone else is actually using 3 clicks or 20 clicks. It's an anomaly, right? And I cannot actually have rules around that because there are so many. So these are learning systems which learn by itself, and just point out to me that there is an anomaly from an IP address, from a user, from this, and this and immediately alerts my team, at which point they go and look.
Right.
If it's a valid pattern, we tell it's not a threat, or we figure out it's actually coming from an IP which potentially might be. We block that IP.
Sure.
So many such systems are actually built in as the even when the code is pushed. Vulnerability scanning is done, containers are scanned, infrastructures are scanned, APIs are scanned. But as I told you, we are probably there's nothing called perfect security.
I agree.
What we are trying to do is fit all these things, try to be as mindful of these as possible, and build it into the system and not do it as an afterthought.
Sure. It's very outwardly is how I'm looking at it, right? A consumer, if they were listening to what you just said in terms of how the data is getting protected, how you guys are running these audits, how it's so complicated when I look at it.
Yeah, but for the customer, it should not be complicated, right? So
Correct.
it should be completely hidden from the customer. But what this does is give a trust to the customer that his data is protected. His data is, even internal teams, the data is matched for all practical purposes, and his data is safe with us. His money is safe with us.
Sure.
As a digital bank operating across countries, this is of paramount importance to us. Compliance is not just to satisfy the regulators; it is also to ensure that these customers we have, who are our biggest assets, feel safe that about their data, about a lot of the information they provide us.
Sure. Sure. So did this lead you to have 65 plus technologies that you're using into
I don't know where you got these numbers.
Okay.
My own philosophy is very
different from what
different,
I'm saying. Okay.
different from that. I sincerely believe, see, there is no competitive advantage you get by using so many technologies.
Sure.
Right? Actually, the competitive advantage is got from the fact if you make your systems uniform, observable, and simple. As the systems become more and more complex, if the parts of the systems are simple, you can actually scale the system, you can debug the system, you can do the system. So my philosophy is actually very, very different. We do not use technology for technology's sake, as I told you, right? So just because there's a new tech, we won't end up using it. Right. A lot of us would use it in a POC and all these things. So for example, there are a lot of things we use in small modules, but we won't push it out till we are very confident that it is actually giving me a benefit around that. And things like that. So we are on top of everything, but in general, keeping it simple and observable is really something the entire team strives for. Otherwise, what happens is, as you grow bigger and bigger, it becomes impossible to manage large systems. Keeping means it might sound counterintuitive, but keeping things simple is the number one thing you have to do when you scale. Observe, make it observable. Basically, you know where things are going wrong, right, and all these things, and keep it simple.
Sure.
And you will be able to scale. And simple parts make up a very complicated system, and then you can do it. So yeah, I don't know about the 65. I hope we are not using. I'd be very disappointed if we are using 65 technologies.
Okay, all right. No, glad that you clarified that. So Natraj, if you recall our discussion, our coffee chat just before we got here, we discussed about how the timelines that you guys have managed to change for your end consumers. Can we talk about that a little? What was it before? What is it now in terms of, when people come onto your platform?
Right. What we have been trying is give a very while we are a bank, right? So we do banking, credit, investments, payments, and all these things. The DNA that Raghu is trying to build for Zolve is it should be the best of the breed consumer product company, right? with the sort of the compliance, security, and the rigor of a bank.
Sure.
Right. What I mean with that is that you should not need 5 days to create an account.
Right.
You should not be sort of inhibited by the fact that, oh, I don't have an SSN, that's why I don't have a credit history, that's why I can't have a credit card for 1 year or
Right.
2 years and
Right.
things like that. I'll get less than nice rates for my loans and insurances and things like that. Means if you do not have a credit history in the US or a driving history in the US, the insurance premiums would be probably would cost you more than the EMI of the car.
Wow.
It is true.
Okay.
I have a lot of relatives there, and it's the same thing around that.
Okay.
Even more than the credit card, that's the first thing which hurts them, because a lot of the US, if you stay in the suburbs and if you're not in New York, Chicago, and 2 or 3 of the cities, you do need a car.
Right.
As soon as you really land. And then buying that car and getting the insurance for the car is a painful exercise. So that's what we wanted to. And we wanted to give all these products without, and one of the goals around that is that give it in a way that it is very, with a great experience, meets the expectations of the customer, and it's engaging. Right. So for example, someone can come to the Zolve platform, give me whatever information is required for me to underwrite. And a lot of our customers do not have a formal credit history. For example, students, right?
Correct.
So we use other means of to alternate data sources to underwrite them. We have to then do a KYC. We have to validate their travel status and everything. We have to do some security checks, and then give you a bank account, a debit card, a credit card, ability to remit money from either places in the future. You can actually do everything under 5 minutes.
Wow.
Right. So if you have all the documents and are in the United States, you can go from just signing up with your phone number and email to getting a usable virtual debit card and a credit card in 5 minutes.
Sure.
And then you can actually ask us to ship the card, and you get the card. We deliver it through FedEx in a day or so.
Okay.
A day if you're in a big city, a day and a half if you're in a smaller town. Which is actually a big improvement from how, say, a larger bank could operate.
7 days to a day, you're saying? Technically?
Yeah, actually, if it's 5 minutes, means basically think about the use case. You are traveling to the United States. So one of the first things you need once you land there and get out of the airport is an Uber to.
Correct.
Yeah. So Forex cards. A lot of the Forex cards are actually not rejected by Uber's fraud, because they're not. So a lot of them, even I have faced that. I end up using my Indian credit card or debit card whenever I land up in the UK or the US and things like that. Now here, what happens is that you already signed up for the Zolve cards and accounts. And even in India, we allow you to deposit money in the account, not operate the account, but deposit money so that you have money in your account. Credit limit is also there. You go there, take a selfie where we do a liveness check. It hardly takes 2 seconds. And if everything is set and your documents are all in place, we have underwritten you earlier, immediately you can actually get your debit card number and a credit card number, which is usable. Put it on Uber and you walk out of the airport, book an Uber and go home using a Zolve instrument.
Excellent.
Right. So that is very, very important. Means while it sounds like a small, because you can't even use cash.
Right.
You may, or your Forex card may or may not get accepted, and you'll be stuck. Then you end up using the Indian credit cards, and that also we don't know which works, which doesn't work, and things like that. And so there is this same with how we move money, right? So one of the first things you have to do is how do you move money. So we have been striving to innovate on that, right? So there is the US ACH system where it is used for interbank transfers, which takes days.
The automatic clearinghouse.
Automatic clearinghouse. We have been building intelligence platforms around that to figure out how to make it 2 things: how to increase the success rates of these transfers, and how to make it faster,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
While assessing the risk of the transfer. So similarly, we have done such things even in the US to India transfers, where you can actually move money from US to India, your US Zolve bank account to your Indian account. Say you want to transfer money to your parents or things like that in minutes, 1 or 2 minutes.
Wow.
Right. So what we are doing is we are trying to solve for the customer. Right. FinTech is a very complicated ecosystem. We would be successful in that, and especially with, as I told you, the consumer app kind of thing. If we are able to provide all of these services in a very usable, simple form to the customer, where he or she doesn't need to relearn a lot of the ways. Okay, this is how I have to do. Oh, I have to know about ACH. I have to know about Swift. I have to know about Wire.
Right.
I have to know about crypto. I have to know about this. Our goal is to basically make it simple, but at the same time provide the cutting edge without compromising, or not even compromising. Basically, being better than the large banks or something like that. But give them an experience where they do not, as they're migrating from one country to another, they have enough headaches to solve.
Like the way you say it.
And if we can solve for their financial problems, we would have made a difference.
Great. So this is almost taking UPI to the world, in short.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not
Okay.
yet. Because UPI is means this is something that all Indians should be extremely proud of. UPI is by far the most advanced payment system in the world.
Right.
No one can even hold a candle to it. Seriously, means you want to transfer money from me to you, I can just use your phone number. I don't need to know your bank account and transfer it to you in 1 minute.
Correct.
And the kind of work, say, a PhonePe and Google Pay has done to democratize this is phenomenal. And even though I was not involved with the UPI part of it, I was involved with the Aadhaar part of thing. I'm incredibly proud of this innovation coming out of India.
Sure.
So no, we are not there yet.
Okay. You see it going that way?
We would try to,
Okay.
right? Means our greatest success would be if someone is moving from India to US and we can provide that kind of experience, whatever be the underlying technology underneath, and allow them to move money, pay bills, move money from US to US accounts, US to India accounts, and all these things without having to relearn the entire system. That would be the great win. We're not there yet, but I think there are sort of closed loop systems in the US, like Zelle, which is really a very closed loop system. Only a few banks are part of it, but those are not as accessible as a UPI.
Sure.
And
it's not as robust.
Yeah, right. So one of the things we also foresee is that we are in multiple countries, right? So we are onboarding people from multiple countries.
Okay.
Is how can we get the best user experience and and from different countries, not just one country. UPI is a classic example. If we can actually do that, it's a huge thing. Similarly, there are things done in, say, Indonesia or somewhere else, and if we can actually bake it into a product and make it available to the global citizen, that would be phenomenal for us. It will take a lot of work, but I think we are in a good position because we know about the systems in these countries that we can actually assimilate it and get it there.
Wow. That'll be revolutionary if anything.
Yes, and that's the goal around that. As I told you, we just don't want to create a drab old banking product around that.
Got it. So, good news is you're in the right place. You're solving a problem that you like to solve. So, fantastic. Do you see blockchain somewhere getting used in cross-border payments in what you guys are doing?
Yes, very much. Cross-border payments is a thing, to put it in a very subtle way. Right? And most of it actually depends on 2 or 3 people who would do that. They are the intermediaries who would move the money, and also the SWIFT transfer system.
Right.
Now, the problem is, one is you need accessibility to banks and things like that. Second is the cost of the transfer is prohibitive. Third is it is also slow, right? So this whole cross-border remittance, and it's a huge business. It's
Right.
$500-600 billion of remittances get done each year across the world. Now, So this is ripe for disruption. So the answer to your question is yes. Now, theoretically, and also in some year, for example, Ripple started in 2012. Stellar started a few years later by the same founder of Ripple, have done a lot of things around that. And in countries where there are sanctions or banking systems are, yeah, there is also adoption. For example, the largest amount of these P2P Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, the crypto transactions happen in countries you would least expect it to happen.
Right.
Nigeria, Venezuela, and things like that. Right. But as of now, I think it's still in its infancy. Right. While in theory, Stellar coin Lumen or Ripple coin Ripple is mostly for the business banks to do that. Can solve the problem. There are a few problems around that, right? Access to that, conversion to a fiat currency. For example, someone and access to that, so you move money from India, US to India, you buy say Stellar on the Stellar network, they immediately transfer you. It's fast. And Stellar, unlike Bitcoin, is not mined, it's pre-mined, so it doesn't take a lot of Bitcoin, for example, is not meant for transferring money and all. It becomes very expensive to mine it. But Stellar and Ripple, they are not. So in theory you can, but for example, if you do it in India, the challenges would be what is the liquidity? Yeah. Are there enough anchor points? It's actually called anchors. Anchors are basically the on-ramp, off-ramp of the, so you
Sure.
buy in a currency, then the transfer happens, and then
Moves
you
to another, yeah.
load into the
Right.
currency. Are there enough anchor points? Is there enough liquidity for such trading pairs and things like that? So I think it will come. It will disrupt. It's
Sure.
ripe for disruption.
Sure.
I think it will take a little more time to mature as a and completely replace the SWIFT system and all these things. But what it will do is it will democratize it, right? So now it is available to people who have access to banks and all these things. But there are a lot of, I'm not just talking about India, but in Africa and all these things. And that's where in Africa things like M-Pesa and all these things became hugely successful.
Correct.
Right? I don't see why this will not. And this will bring in the sort of the security of the blockchain, right? The trustworthiness of the distributed trustworthiness of the blockchain, yeah, and disrupt this sector. So I don't see why not. I think it's still
time.
a little time away where it becomes really ubiquitous
Sure.
and replaces the SWIFT systems and the normal. So even at Zolve, as of now, we handle this through traditional mechanisms. We have a partnership with TransferWise and also with SBM in India to move money, and they're fabulous partners around that. Solid technology, both of them, and it is and we use them to move money and provide the kind of experience I was talking to you about. But at some point we also will see how we get into it, but as of now we do not have a yet. So Stellar looks the best option,
Right.
but especially in countries where there are anchors available who can actually convert it into a fiat currency and there is enough liquidity, but we have not made any concrete plans.
Do you think it's a 2 to 3 year kind
No,
of
I don't
time?
think so. It's much sooner.
Is it?
Yeah, it's much,
comforting.
yeah, it's much sooner because the kind of with the whole blockchain went from being exotic to mainstream
Right.
during this pandemic, right? And I think the kind of innovations which is happening, the kind of is phenomenal. I think there will be a little bit of consolidation in there are too many new L1, L2 chains which is happening. But I think the consolidation will happen, and then we'll have a very stable way of moving, a much more trustworthy way of moving money.
Sure.
Much faster, much cheaper, and accessible to people without very formal or large banking.
Right, right. When we were chatting a while back, you also mentioned about how you had made credit assessment simpler with technology at Zolve. would you care to share that with our audience on how did you guys evaluate that section? How did you guys go about?
We are still building it out, but again, we did not start with the fact that we have to make it. The whole point was we were working with a lot of people, say students, who did
Right.
not have a lot of them who did not have work experience, who not have formal credit history. So even if you go to the bureau, you will get a new to credit. Now, how do I underwrite them? And that's where we figured out, okay, what are the alternate ways, what are the alternate variables through which we can figure out their ability to pay, whether they, if I give them a credit line, will they be able to pay me back? What is the intent to pay? Ability is one thing, intent is the another thing, and my ability to collect, right? And we use multiple variables, and there is no single year on that. So based on different use cases, we use different graphs to figure out what to collect, how to assess someone, how much credit to give. Even the credit decisioning is across the distribution curve. We have a distribution curve as per the risk profile of different users and all these things, and we give it across the distribution curve because it helps us learn
Right.
around that. And each of them have different ways we evaluate them. Some need more documentation. We ask them for additional documentation. We even figure out their banking histories and things like that. In some certain cases, we are very sure from the existing documentation or existing information they give that we will be able to underwrite their risk, and our collection is good, their intent to pay is good. So we use a combination of the traditional means to underwrite, which is basically the credit score, the CIBIL score, the CRIF score, and all. In addition to that, we use a lot more variables, and which helps us expand our target group, who we can actually give access to such products.
Sure. But just a question: CIBIL score is not going to be available for a student, right?
Exactly, and that's
that makes it complicated.
and it's not for all students. A lot of the students who are moving to the US do have a couple of years of work ex and things like that. But there are a lot of people who are going fresh and all these things. In their case, the score will be a new to credit. So in that case, we use other.
Potentially, you're creating data for them then.
Not creating data. We are utilizing different variables for them to do that. What we do is that once he lands in the US, and because and we actually keep on prodding, okay, this is good credit behavior, this is bad credit behavior, and we reward them for good behaviors and things like that. We help them build up a credit score very quickly.
Right.
If say even before Zolve, if I remember when I used to stay in the US, it took me quite some time to get a card. I had an American Express card, but that was because of the fact that I used to be a frequent flyer on the Sky Alliance, the Air France. So they somehow gave me the card. A lot of my friends, it took almost a year to get a decent credit card with a decent limit.
Sure.
And that much longer to build a credit score. Right. So here you are building the credit score right from day one. You land there, you spend their money. As you repay it back, we report to the bureau, and in 3-4 months you start seeing your credit score. And we also for people, some people who need, we educate them. Okay, this is how you can actually improve it, increase it. And people who show good behavior, we automatically increase the credit limits and all these things which they can use, and things like that. So we help build up that score there. But when we underwrite, and if they don't have a score, we can still underwrite using alternate data sources.
Sure. Are you also looking at expanding on to building a data sciences team? Because you're speaking so much about data.
Yes. Data is core, right? I think at some point in time, especially around the variety of data we are getting, one of our main plays will become data. So data science is central to it. So we have been doing some things, we have been working. As of now, we have made offers to very, very senior data science.
Congratulations.
We are well on our way to building that. But in the interim, we have actually worked with other people, other firms to build up these models. Right. But yes, data science is absolutely critical. It's
core, right? For you.
It is core. Yeah. It is not good to have. It's absolutely core. Because it's not only on credit and multi-country credit. It is also on fraud. It is also on how we. So, for example, we have multiple products. How we sort of show what the customer wants and all these things. How do we personalize the whole experience for him? Even when I was telling you about the fund transfer, how do we get more and more intelligent about the fund transfers and all these things? Because we have to assess the risk. You cannot, because the underlying system is still taking that many days, but how do you assess the risk to it? So that becomes yes. So data science is core to us. It's not good to have, and we build and things like that. So
sure. So there is a use case and it can be worked upon. Is how you're
absolutely,
looking at it, right?
it can make a sort of it can be a competitive differentiator.
Right. No, I understand that. So when you joined Zolve, let me get this right. Was it just 5 of you all, or was it lesser?
It was probably 10.
10 people.
Engineering was much smaller, but
Sure.
I think total it was 10 or 15.
Okay. So now what are you guys at in terms of numbers?
We are pretty large now.
Okay.
So I think we have around 180, 190
Wow,
employees.
190.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a massive growth in what, 8 months?
Massive growth in 8 to 10 months.
Oh, excellent. So, Natraj, what were these 2 things that you always thought of while you were hiring for your own engineering team? So, if you can talk about your hiring philosophy.
Yeah, the engineering team is much smaller, right? My belief is instead of hiring a large engineering team, we should have a very focused, very sort of talent dense team. So, few things I look for. Obviously, the skill and all these things is base. I won't even talk about that. Without that, we won't talk. But in addition to that, what we look for is that are they not just ready for what we are doing now? Are they? Will they be able to scale up, or have they already seen what we will be in 6 months, 1 year time? We do not want to hire people just for. Yes, there might be sort of one-offs, but in general, what we have hired people is who can scale with the company. We are not looking for people to come here, work for 8 months, then realize this is. We are looking for very long-term relationships.
Sure.
So that is something we look for. So and in that we look for how good his basics are. Has he actually seen such complexity, which we potentially may not have now, but we will definitely have in 6 months' time? Can he work across active kind of multi-data center scenarios and all these things? So when we get people for infrastructure, we look at that. We don't look at people who just manage infrastructure. We look at people who can actually code, even in the infra team, and who can create infrastructure as a code and innovate around that and things like that. So that is one very important thing we look at. The second thing, it's a personal bias actually, is I also really value people who are very inquisitive, right? And there's a reason behind that. Tech changes very, very, very quickly. Now, there are 2 classes of one who just use technology, second who actually understand what they're using and can build on that, right? I really prefer the other one. So if you're using an open source project like Kafka or something like that, I really value a guy who has actually read the code of Kafka or even a database systems. I hate black boxes. I also need my team to hate black boxes.
Sure.
There are great advantages to it. One is obviously see, even these large systems are not perfect systems. They will malfunction. If you know them inside out, how they're using it, you'll be able to fix them much easily. I have had so many, even in Ola, where we fixed the open source and patched them and all this because they knew about it. We were able to build databases from scratch because a lot of engineers knew how to build databases. It's not that Ola is a database company, but when they used it, they actually took the time to understand how they wrote it. Second is a lot of these are written by some of the best engineers in the world, and you can only gain by reading how they have done it, why did they do it in a certain way, and all these things. And it actually helps you become a EHR. And it is not limited to tech, right? So we encourage people to read things like behavioral economics and things like that,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
so one of the things, even as a matter of fact, the New Year gift that Raghu gifted everybody was actually a book. Different books. We selected different books for different people, and we gave books
Wow, nice.
around that. And it doesn't need to be technology. We did not actually give a technology book to the tech team and all these things. We give different kind of books to the people. Even otherwise, I used to have my product managers read NRLE and read game theory, understand that and all these things. That inquisitiveness is something I really value. It's
Sure.
not a it's not a criteria which I used to not hire, but people who show that, people who have demonstrated that before,
You value them.
I value them really, and that also helps me learn, right? So
Sure.
it's the same with me as with others. If I am not up to date with these, I'll be obsolete. I'll be a dinosaur in 2 years. So
Interesting. So for all those audiences listening there, I'm sure you continuously hiring, right, for your team as well. So do we take this as two pointers that they need to think of? One is they need to get their basics right. Second is be inquisitive and ask you more questions, right? And not just you. I think wherever they go.
wherever they go, right?
Right.
Whatever you are doing, and even in your field, you would have seen that
Yeah.
the ones who really do well are people who ask a lot of questions,
Correct.
who understand why we are doing
What
things.
we're doing,
It is
yeah.
not a trait which is limited to a good engineer alone. It is a trait. So yes, and as I told you, the basics right, ready for the next phase, and very inquisitive.
Excellent, excellent. So for all those people who want to actually go ahead and work with Zolve and work with Natraj, of course, we'll put the social handles on LinkedIn and the other socials. Please feel free to reach him, but keep these two things in mind is how I'd like to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are always open for a cup of coffee. So
Do drop by, is it?
yeah, please drop by. Even if you have, if you're not open for changing now, but we definitely want to talk with you, hear you, and learn from you. Right. So
Sure.
the more people we talk, the more we learn.
Absolutely.
Means even every interview I do, or in every, I don't only look at it from a perspective that, oh, I am trying to grill him.
Right.
That's not. I look at it as a two-way
Conversation. Yeah.
A lot of the things I learned from talking to various people during interviews, or so there's always a good takeaway. I'm really disappointed coming out from an interview, because there is always some takeaway I have
That's so
from
nice. So
smart
nice.
people. So
Right.
yeah,
It's a good thought
please,
process.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the coffee is on me. So
Sure. So I think I would want to ask you one last question before we wind up, Natraj. This was our conversation. Again, I'm taking it back to where we were having coffee and having a conversation, where I learned from you, where you very nicely spoke about one specific attribute that people should have. Talk more about failures, along with your successes, because it's important that we learn from our failures. So can you deliberate on that a little, so that we don't just have audiences who want to apply to you, right? They're also audience who are from the same field, founders who are watching the show. So if you can talk about that.
right, and this is a lot from my personal experience also, right? So obviously, especially in the tech community, we have this culture where we blog about a lot of the things we have built. We put out open source projects and things like that, which is great. Means the kind of community that the tech and engineering has is phenomenal.
Right.
Means the reason why a lot of the startups are not repeating the mistakes that others have made is because of the open source communities. People have shared their learning, right? Everybody. One area where I feel not a lot of it is done. A lot of the large companies do that, as a matter of fact. But I think can be is we talk about the failures, right? So for me personally, a lot of these innovations and things like that have come when we failed. It might have been an outage. It might have been a scaling problem. It might have been an algorithmic prediction problem, or things like that. And how we learn from that, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of it actually has come from that. So that's where I think we need to talk a lot about how, what are the failures, why did we do that, and then what did we do to get out of
Correct.
there.
Correct.
And what it helps is, especially for me at Zolve or something, is that I can learn from a lot of the things that others have already faced and not do it better, right? Encounter new failures, maybe.
Correct.
Right? But this is something that we should share more, and it will help the community immensely, right?
I agree.
If say someone had an outage, why did we have that outage? What could we have done in both in technology, process, monitoring, not to have it? What did you do to fix it? What new innovations you came up with?
Sure.
A lot of the things we have done in the past and things like that, I was mentioning about a database that the Ola team had created, actually came out of problems. We were not able to scale with the traditional data systems and all these things. And if we talk about that, why we did that, it would be of great benefit to everyone.
I'm sure it would be. So we will look forward to one of your tech blogs that you're going to write about, what was broken and how did you go about fixing it? Because I think that will be a huge learning for us as well on seeing how this works. Because I think fintech by itself is extremely complicated for a normal user like me. I'm not talking about technologists like yourselves. And then on top, to top it all, then we're also talking about how can I use my line of credit overseas. And I'm also talking about, because I'm an Indian, I love to keep some savings, in my account. You spoke about that when we were discussing how Zolve is helping consumers there. I really love this idea. Yeah, but it's important for us to share it with more people like me, who are commoners, right? The non-technologist side of the world. So I will look forward to that blog from your side, Natraj.
Sure.
Perfect. Would you like to have any last words before we wind up the show?
No, it was wonderful talking to you. Very pertinent discussion. So, love the experience.
Thank you so much for being on our show, and glad you could come here to our office.
My pleasure. As
All
always.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.